Hare Krishna, welcome everyone to our Caitanya Caritāmrta overview class. Thank you for joining in. We'll begin with our prayers. Om Jnana-timirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitam He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Deenabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate तप्त कांचन गौरांगी राधे वृंदावनेश्वरी वृषभानु सुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये वाञ्छाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। नमो विष्णुपादाय कृष्णपृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्त स्वामी नितिनामिने नमस्ते सारस्वती देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेषा शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देशतारिणे जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासदि गौर भक्तवृंद हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे Hare Krishna. So welcome everyone. We are discussing from Caitanya Caritāmrta Adi Leela. We are on chapter 10. The chapter is entitled The Trunk, the Branches and the Sub-Branches of the Chaitanya Tree. So in this chapter, Kaviraj Goswami is describing the various devotees of Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. In the 9th chapter, Kaviraj Goswami described the Bhakti Kalpa Vriksha, a very, very wonderful transcendental tree of Lord Sri Chaitanya's devotion. And Mahaprabhu is the gardener himself. Swayam Malakara Krishna Prema Amar Taru Swayam. Prema Amar Taru Kumam. He is the Swayam Malakar. Mahaprabhu became the gardener and he planted the seed of love of God, and it has fructified into a big, very, very luxuriantly growing tree, which has hundreds of branches and hundreds of thousands of sub branches. So Kaviraj Goswami is describing the various branches and the sub branches of this Chaitanya tree. So far we have discussed 41 branches, 41st branch or 42nd branch. So we'll continue from the 43rd, 44th, 45th branch. That is the most prominent branch, the branch of Srila Rupa Goswami, Sanatana Goswami and Anupam. So it is a wonderful coincidence that today is Guru Purnima, and we'll be discussing the wonderful life of Rupa Sanatana Goswami. So yesterday also we started the discussion of this very wonderful branch, the 43rd, 44th and 45th branch. We are on verse number 84. Kaviraj Goswami describes that they are the best of all. This branch is the best of all the branches. And we discussed yesterday also that Prabhupada writes that Rup Sanatan, they belong to Bharadwaj Gotra. And he describes the genealogy of Rup Sanatan Goswami. They belong to a Saraswat Brahmana family. And in 12th century, there was a Brahmana named Sarvagya, and he had a big family, big kingdom. But somehow his sons, they were not good in good terms so much. So Rupeshwar and Harihar, they were thrown out of the kingdom. They were not given the property. So they moved out, and they moved to a place called Naihati, which is in East Bengal, which is Bangladesh today. So this Rupeshwar, he had 5 sons. Out of those 5 sons, the youngest one was Mukunda. And the Mukunda, one of his sons was Kumaradev, and this Kumaradev was father of Rup, Sanatan, and Vallabh. So Kumaradev, he lived in Paitiabad in Bangladesh, and Rup Sanatan, they and Vallabha, they were the only one who took to Vaishnavism, and they moved to Ramkeli, and there they were spending their time discussing Bhagavatam. They were such great Brahmanas. Sanatan Goswami was a very, very wonderful scholar. He was a scholar of Persian, Arabic, Sanskrit. He was well known as a very, very powerful, influential Brahmana. Both of them, both the brothers, Rup Sanatan. And last time we discussed how Nawab Hussain Shah, he employed Rup Sanatan Goswami because there was this wonderful palace which was built for Nawab Hussain Shah, and the Peru, the Mistri who made this palace, he made a statement, oh, I could have done even better job. ये तो कुछ भी नहीं, इससे अच्छा बना सकता हूँ. So king became angry and he killed him. But then they found out that this palace was not still complete. So he sent a person go to Moragram, and then he could not give second statement. He could not tell, okay, what to do at Moragram, and he became busy with something else. So somehow this person met Sanatan Goswami, and Sanatan Goswami, he told, okay, Moragram is a place for Mistri and Karigar, you take 12 men. That's how king became very much happy when he came to know about Sanatan and Rupa, and he invited them and actually, he threatened them, if you don't take to this service of being prime minister and finance minister, I will torture all the Hindus. I'll kill thousands of Hindus. As a result of that, they had to serve. But Sanatan Goswami and Rupa Goswami, all the whole day, they were engaging in this service of Mughals. This Mughal king who was a Malekcha, who had no, good habits, doing all sinful activities. But in the evening, when they would come, they would read Bhagavatam. It is said that when Sanatan was a young man, one day in the night he got a dream where a Brahmana came and he gave a gift of Bhagavatam. And this Sanatan was so happy receiving this Bhagavatam because it was a rare gift. It was not like today's age where you can order Bhagavatam online or you can have an e-copy or whatever you want. It was a rare gift. So Sanatan Goswami, he woke up and he found, oh, the person is not there. He could not sleep. And next day morning, same Brahmana came with a Bhagavatam and gifted him. From that day on, Bhagavatam became the life and soul of Sanatan Goswami. To such an extent that he wrote 8 verses in glorification of Bhagavatam. Sarva Shastra Piyusha Sarva Vedaika Satphala Sarva Siddhanta Ratnadhya Sarva Vedaika Satprada Sarva Bhagavata Prana Srimad Bhagavata Prabho Kalodhvanto Ditaritya Sri Krishna Parivartitaha. Sarva Shastrabdi Piyusha, he's writing, Bhagavatam is the essence of all the scriptures. It is a ripened fruit, it is Nigam Kalpataro Galitam Phalam. Sarva Siddhanta Ratnadhya, it is a crown jewel of all the philosophical conclusions. It is the only thing which can give vision to the people in general. Madeka Bandhu, Mad Sangi, Mad Guru, Mad Mahadhana. Madnistarak Madbhagya Madananda Namostute. Bhagavatam is my only friend, it is my life, it is my everything. That's how both Rup Sanatan, they would spend their time discussing Bhagavatam. They had made actually Vrindavan in Ramkeli. Even today, if you go, this place, it is having this Vrindavan. There are 5 types of Vrindavan. One is Golok Vrindavan, where Krishna is staying. Second is Bhauma Vrindavan, when Krishna descends in this world and he performs his pastimes on this Bhumandala. Third is Drishyamana Vrindavan, that Vrindavan which we are seeing now. It may not have the same externals as Krishna was when he was there. Still, it is Vrindavan. Fourth is Hriday Sthit Vrindavan. Hriday Sthit Vrindavan means that pure devotees, they have Vrindavan in their heart. Annera Hriday Man Mora Man Vrindavan Mane Vane Ek Kori Jani. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu tells. For others, their mind and their heart, they are different. Their mind may be full of desires, material desires, but my mind is Vrindavan. Mora Mana Vrindavan. That is Hriday Sthita Vrindavan. And fifth is Hriday Prerit Vrindavan. That Vrindavan which manifests because of the inspiration of the devotees. So Rup Sanatan, they made Vrindavan in Ramkeli. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he came to meet Rup Sanatan. As he was going to Vrindavan, he on his way went to Ramakeli. And actually, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu tells Rup Sanatan, actually, I had nothing to do in Ramakeli. I have come just to meet you, brothers. And Rup Sanatan, they were so very happy having darshan of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Actually, they had written many letters to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu describing their fallen condition. But Mahaprabhu didn't reply. But Mahaprabhu replied one letter with just one statement. He said, just like a lady who has a paramour, a married lady, a wife, if she has a paramour, she will serve her husband in such a way that he will not come to know that this lady has a paramour. That's it. And Rup Sanatan, they understood that we have to continue serving this Nawab Hussain Shah, but keep remembering Krishna. Ma manusmara yudhyacha. And then when Mahaprabhu met them, they surrendered their life and soul. And Rup Sanatan, they said, actually we are more fallen than Jagai Madhai. Jagai Madhai hoite koti koti gun. Adhama patita papi ami dui jan. Oh, Jagai Madhai, they had so many wonderful qualities. We are so fallen. So somebody may say, oh, it is just a, exaggeration. How can somebody say that Jagai Madhai had good qualities? They actually give logical reasons. Brahmana jati tara navadi pe ghar. Neech seva nahi kare nahi nichera kurpar. Are they are Brahmanas. They have their home in Navadvip and they never served the Malechas. And we, Malecha Jati, Malecha Sevi, Kari Malecha Karma, Go Brahmana Drohi Sange Amara Sangama. Are we are Malechas, we are serving Malechas, we are associating with Malechas. That's how they express their fallen condition. So Mahaprabhu, he said, Rup Sanatan, please give up your humility. Aji se dohara naam Rup Sanatan, Dainya chhad Dainya tumar phate moraman. O Rup Sanatan Goswami, today I initiate you as Rupa Goswami and Sanatana Goswami. They were named as Dabir Khas and Sakar Malik. Sanatan was called as Sakar Malik. Rupa was called as Dabir Khas. Dainya chhad, and Mahaprabhu gave first instruction. What is the first instruction he is giving? Just give up your humility. And that's how ultimately they left the service of Nawab and they went to Vrindavan to meet Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. On the way, Mahaprabhu met them in Varanasi and in Prayag, and Mahaprabhu instructed Sanatan Goswami for 2 months, Rupa Goswami for 10 days. Then Prabhupada writes that in 1514, youngest brother Anupam, he left this world and he went to the abode of Lord Ramchandra. Anupam, he was a great devotee of Lord Ram. Actually, Mahaprabhu describes about him in Madhya Leela. He says, I tried to convert Anupam to Krishna Bhakti. And Rup Sanatan also, they tried their best. That, they were telling, oh, it's Anupam. Krishna is a supreme personality. He is a Rasaraj. He is the embodiment of all the avatars. Please worship Lord Krishna. Anupam, he could not accept it. He would cry. He cried whole night, and the next day he came to Mahaprabhu and said, Mahaprabhu, please give me your permission. I want to commit suicide. Because I cannot leave the service of Lord Ram, but I cannot not follow your instructions. Mahaprabhu embraced him and he glorified. This is a chaste devotee who never leaves his Lord. Sei bhakta dhanya jena chhade prabhur charan. Sei prabhu dhanya jena chhade nijajan. Durdaiva sevak yadi jayanya sthane. Sei prabhu dhanya tare chule dhvariyane. Mahaprabhu tells that devotee is so fortunate who never leaves the Lord, and that Lord is so great who never leaves his devotees. Somehow, by some unfortune, if the devotee leaves the Lord, Durdaiva sevaka yadi jayanya sthane, you know what Lord does? Lord catches hold of the shikha of the devotee and brings him back. Sei prabhu dhanya tare chule dhvariyane. So Srila Prabhupada writes that who was Rupa Goswami? Rupa Goswami, he was Rupa Manjari in Krishna Leela. And Rupa Goswami, he has written so many books. Of these, Prabhupada describes the 16 are very popular. Hamsaduta, Uddhav Sandesh, Krishna Janma Tithi Vidhi, Radha Krishna Ganodesh Deepika, Laghu Bhagavatamrit, Brihad Bhagavatamrit, Vidagdha Madhav, Lalita Madhav, Stavamala. And of all these, the most celebrated book by Rupa Goswami is Bhakti Rasamrit Sindhu. Rupa Goswami, Sanatana Goswami, they entered Vrindavan in 1515. And Srila Rupa Goswami published this Bhakti Rasamrit Sindhu in 1535. That means after around 35 to 40. After around 25 years of bhajan, Rupa Goswami, he has given this book, Bhakti Rasamrit Sindhu, which is nothing but the realizations of Rupa Goswami. And that's why it is a very, very celebrated book. The entire science of Krishna Bhakti is explained by Rupa Goswami in a very, very systematic detail. So Prabhupada writes that ultimately Rupa Goswami, although he was serving Nawab Hussain Shah, but he gave up all his family connections and he distributed his wealth. He went to Vrindavan and before that they were there with Mahaprabhu in Jagannath Puri. Rupa Goswami, Sanatan Goswami, they were associating with Haridas Thakur. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he would appreciate the writings of, the handwriting of Rupa Goswami. It was so very beautiful. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, whenever he would be in separation from Krishna, Rupa Goswami would compose systematic, very nice verses suiting the mind and the mood of Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And by his direction, Rupa Goswami, by the direction of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, wrote these two books, Lalita Madhav and Vidagdha Madhav. They were there for some time in Jagannath Puri, and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu sent both of them to Vrindavan with 4 instructions. Tumi kariha bhakti shastrera prachar, Mathuraya lupta tirthera kariha uddhar, Vrindavane Krishna Seva Vaishnava Achar Bhakti Smriti Shastra Kori Kori Ha Prachar. So Mahaprabhu gave these four instructions. Mathuraya Lupta Tirthera Koriha Uddhar. Please excavate the lost holy places in Vrindavan. Vrindavan Krishna Seva. Please establish the deity worship. Please make huge temples. Vrindavane Krishna Seva Vaishnava Achar. And you write books and you establish the principles of Vaishnava etiquettes. Srila Sanatana Goswami, he was Lavanga Manjari or Rati Manjari. His spiritual master was Vidya Vachaspati. And Prabhupada writes that because they were serving Muslims, they would always consider themselves very fallen. Mura karma, mura hate golai bandhiya, ku vishaya vishtha garte diya, che phelaiya. They would tell Mahaprabhu, oh, what we have done? We have, mura karma, mura hate, our sinful activities, they have become a noose around our necks. And we are fallen in this deep, dark well of material existence. Please deliver us. Prabhupada writes that Mahaprabhu, he taught through his disciples various principles. The four chief followers of Mahaprabhu, he taught through them various principles. Through Ramananda Rai, Mahaprabhu established the fact that devotee can actually conquer the effect of Cupid. Because Ramananda Rai, he would personally bathe the Devadasis, but still his mind was still like a log of wood. And Mahaprabhu told that nobody can imitate Ramananda Rai because he is situated in his Nitya Siddha Swarupa as Vishakha Devi. So Mahaprabhu taught that by the power of devotional service, it is possible to conquer the effect of Cupid. And Mahaprabhu had another devotee, Damodar Pandit. Sometimes he would criticize Mahaprabhu for doing something apparent wrong. He didn't even spare Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Then through Haridas Thakur, Mahaprabhu taught forbearance. When he was beaten in 22 marketplaces, Mahaprabhu, Haridas Thakur, he was constantly praying for the people who were beating him. Khanda khanda hoye yadi jaye mor pran, tabi to na chhadibe mukhe badane harinam. Even if you cut my body in thousands of pieces, but still I'll not stop chanting the holy names. Forbearance, tolerance. And through Sanatana Goswami, Mahaprabhu taught this principle of humility. Humility and meekness. Actually, Mahaprabhu himself glorifies Rup Sanatana Goswami. Dui Bhai Bhaktaraj Krishna Kripa Patra Vyavahare Rajamantri Hoye Rajapatra. Mahaprabhu tells, he's telling to all the devotees, these two brothers, Dui Bhai Bhaktaraj, they are best of the devotees. They have received the mercy of Krishna, Krishna Kripa Patra. Vyavahare Rajamantri, although they are Rajamantri, they are Rajapatra, nobody can defeat them in knowledge, intelligence, strength, but still they are so humble. Vidya, Buddhi, Bhakti, Bale, Parama Praveen, Tabu Apana ke mane trina hoite hin. So these two brothers, although in Vidya, in knowledge, Buddhi, in intelligence, Bhakti, in devotion, Parama Praveen, they are expert, most expert, Parama Praveen, but still Tabu Apana ke mane trina hoite hin. This is a unimaginable combination in this world. If anybody gets little knowledge, little intelligence, little devotion, he feels proud. I am practicing bhakti so nicely. We may not say it, but on subtle level, these feelings may come. I am doing bhakti nicely. I am better than others who are not practicing. But tabu apana ke mane trina hoite hi. They were parama pravin. They are most expert, but still they would think themselves so very fallen. And what was the extent of their humility? तार दैन्य देखी सुनी पाषाण बिदरे आमी तुष्ट हइया तबे कहिलु दोहारे. Mahaprabhu tells that time when I met these two brothers in Ramakeli, that time only I understood and I bestowed their my mercy. उत्तम हइया हीन करी मानह अपनारे achire be Krishna tomar koribe uddhare. This is a secret of success in Krishna consciousness. Uttam hoiya hina kari manaha. Even if somebody is greatest in devotion, but still if he feels himself to be fallen, he is the bona fide recipient of mercy of the Lord. Because whatever skills, whatever capabilities we have, it is all given by Krishna. Nothing belongs to us. Every day we should remember this. Every day we should, think about this mercy of the Lord. In Bhagavatam, we hear in the first canto, when Arjuna went to Dwarka, he understood that Krishna has departed. He was bringing all the 16,100 queens of Krishna, and on the way he was attacked by some simple cowherd men who had simple bows and arrows. And here is Arjuna, the greatest of the warriors, who had all the celestial weapons, who had defeated Bhishma, Drona, Kripa, who has astonished Lord Shiva, who had defeated Nivata Kavachas. He was defeated by simple cowherdmen. That time, Arjuna, when he returns, he tells Yudhishthira Maharaj, Tadvai dhanushtai shavaratho hayaste soham rati nipataya sadanamanti sarvam shanena tadabhuda sadisha riktam bhasvam hutam kuhakaradhamivoptamushyam. This is the same Gandiva. These are the same horses. This is the same chariot. And I am the same, fighter, warrior. But still, everything has become null and void because Krishna has departed. So therefore, if we understand and if we remember this one principle, that whatever I have is given by Krishna, we will not become proud because nothing belongs to us. Prabhupada writes in the purport, one should not be proud of the borrowed plumes. So that's what Mahaprabhu is telling. Uttam hoiya hinakori manaha apanare. They are the greatest of the devotees, but still they think themselves so very fallen. Achirabe Krishna tomar koribe uthare. So then Prabhupada describes the escape of Sanatana Goswami, the great escape. Sanatana Goswami and Rup Goswami had already departed, and he had divided whatever property he had in 4 parts. One part he had given for maintaining dharmic principles, bhakti, religion. One part he had given to his family members. One part he had kept for emergency for himself. 3 parts he had divided his money. And he left. Then Sanatana Goswami, he was still there, and Nawab, he came to know that he is making a news that he is ill, but he is reading Bhagavatam at home. So he came and he arrested Sanatana Goswami. So Sanatana Goswami, he bribed that jailer of that prison cell. He said, oh, you are Zinda Peer. You are the greatest of the mendicants, renunciants in the Muslims tradition. I want to go to Makkah to pilgrimage. Please help me. And then he gave a very huge amount of money to this jailer and he escaped. And then he met Caitanya. He traveled through all the places and he met Mahaprabhu in Varanasi. When Mahaprabhu was staying at the home of Chandrasekhar. There Mahaprabhu he embraced him, and he, told Chandrasekhar, please take care of Sanatan Goswami. He gave him the dress of a mendicant, and Sanatan Goswami, he would take prasad at the home of a Maharashtrian Brahmana. In Varanasi, there was a Maharashtrian Brahman. So Mahaprabhu told Sanatan that you please, you know, take prasad at this Brahmana's home. And for 2 months, Mahaprabhu explained the science of devotional service to Sanatan Goswami. And there, Mahaprabhu explained this Atma Ram verse in great detail. 61 explanations of Atma Ram verse. Then Sanatan Goswami came to Vrindavan. There he met Subuddhi Rai, and ultimately he returned back to Vrindavan, returned back to Jagannath Puri. On the way, while passing through the various forests, he drank some contaminated water, and he had boils all over his body which were oozing pus and blood, and Sanatan Goswami was in great pain. Sanatan Goswami was thinking, what is the use of this body? Let me go to Jagannath Puri, and on the day of Rath Yatra, I'll throw this body in front of Jagannath Rath, and I'll end my life. That was the plan. It is a very interesting phenomena. Who is Sanatan Goswami? Nitya Siddha associate is Rati Manjari, Lavang Manjari, but in some situations, even Nitya Siddha devotees, they also have these mental turmoils. So it is natural to be disturbed in difficult situations. But when Sanatan Goswami reached Jagannath Puri and he met Chaitanya Mahaprabhu instructed him very nicely. Oh Sanatan, why are you thinking of committing suicide? Your body is not your property, it is my property. And I have so many plans to fulfill through this body of yours, Sanatan Goswami. You cannot end this body. I have plans. I want you to go to Vrindavan and establish the temples and excavate the holy places, write books. I want to do so many things through your body. And that's how Sanatan Goswami was pacified. And actually Mahaprabhu embraced him and cured him also. Similarly, in our life, we may go through various difficult situations, difficult phases of the mind and the body. We should be just tolerant and take shelter of some devotees, associate, take guidance from devotees. That is the only way we can survive in Krishna consciousness. Otherwise, we may also commit spiritual suicide. We may start thinking this process is so far out, I am not meant for it. So therefore, we can understand that Sanatan Goswami also he developed such thoughts. So it is, but natural to develop such thoughts in difficult situations. Because, when we can't serve, naturally this thought comes, what is the use of my body? I am not able to do anything. But no, Krishna has greater plans for every one of us. He has plans for each and every devotee. We should never be hopeless. To be hopeful is the most important quality of a devotee. As it is said, if you are not an optimist, you are an atheist. We have to be hopeful. Even in the most difficult situations, there is always a hope. Avashya Rakshibe Krishna iti Vishwas Palan. That is a devotee. That is the hope a devotee always has. So Sanatan Goswami, he was instructed by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and he gave up that thought. Sanatan Goswami, he was so very humble. Mahaprabhu, he told Sanatan, you stay with Haridas Thakur, and they both were staying at Siddhabakul and they were having such a wonderful time together discussing Krishna Katha. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was staying in Gambhira that time. So one day Sanatan Goswami wanted to meet Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and he came through the sandy beach area in the middle of the noon. And noon means the sand was very hot, and Sanatana Goswami, he had blisters all over his feet. So Mahaprabhu, when he saw Sanatana Goswami, walking through, he came through this route. He asked, why you have done this? You could have come through the other route. So out of his humility, he said, oh, Mahaprabhu, I am so fallen. I am untouchable. If by chance, if I come through the road, main road, and the servants of Jagannath, their clothes brush my body, it will become uncontaminated and the offerings will be spoiled. So Mahaprabhu, seeing this humility, he was so very touched and he glorified Sanatana Goswami. He says, oh Sanatan, you are qualified to become the guru of the whole universe. Yadyapiyo tumi ho jagat guru. Jagat guru, you can become Jagat guru. But still you are following this Maryada. That was Sanatana Goswami. So after staying in Jagannath Puri for 1 year, Mahaprabhu, he sent Rupa Goswami and Sanatana Goswami back to Vrindavan. So that is 84th verse description. And in 85th verse, Kaviraj Goswami writes that among these branches, Rup Sanatan were principal, and Anupam, Jiva Goswami, and Rajendra, the other devotee, they are sub branches. So in the purport, Prabhupada describes about Jiva Goswami. Who was Jiva Goswami? Jiva Goswami was Vilas Manjari Gopi, another great devotee, another Nitya Siddha associate of the Lord. So Jiva Goswami, from his childhood, he was very fond of Srimad Bhagavatam. And he came to Navadvip to study Sanskrit. And Nityanand Prabhu personally took Jiva Goswami to all the holy places of Navadvip. Entire Navadvip Mandal Parikrama Jiva Goswami did with Nityananda Prabhu. That time Jiva was a small child. And after doing this Navadvip Mandal Parikrama, he went to Banaras and he studied under a great scholar, Madhusudan Vachaspati. He studied Sanskrit, and after finishing his studies, he went to Vrindavan. And he was there with Rup Sanatan Goswami. In Vrindavan, he established Radha Damodar temple. Srila Prabhupada, before going to America, he would stay in Radha Damodar temple. And there you can still find the Samadhi of Rupa Goswami. In Radha Damodar temple, the personal deities of Jiva Goswami were worshipped, Radha Damodar. And today also you can find this Govardhan Shila. Sanatana Goswami, when he was very old, still he was doing this parikrama of Govardhan every day. Every day he would do parikrama of Govardhan. Every day he would pay 1,000 obeisances to the deities, 2,000 obeisances to the devotees. So one day Krishna personally came as a small boy and said, oh Sanatan Goswami, why are you doing so much of tapasya? You have become so old. You don't have to do this Govardhan parikrama. And he would do a bigger one. We do generally 21 kilometers. He would do a bigger parikrama. And Krishna personally gave him a Shaligram Shila, which has his own footprints and a footprint of a calf and a cow herding stick. And Krishna told him, you just do parikrama of this Govardhan Shila 4 times. That is equivalent to doing this entire Govardhan parikrama. That Govardhan Shila is still there in Radha Damodar temple. So Prabhupada writes that when Jiva Goswami was present in Vrindavan, Krishnadas Goswami, he compiled Caitanya Caritāmrta. And later he inspired, Jiva Goswami inspired Srinivas Acharya, Narottam Das Thakur and Shyamanand Pandit to go to Bengal and preach the various literatures which were written by all these Goswamis. And it was Jiva Goswami who awarded this title Kaviraj to Ramchandra Sen. Ramchandra Sen, he was a disciple of Srinivas Acharya. And when Jiva Goswami was still alive, Janava Devi, wife, the consort of Nityananda Prabhu, she went to Vrindavan, and she was there associating. She was there, she met Jiva Goswami and all the devotees. Now, Srila Prabhupada, he raises a very, very important point there. He says, there are some Sahajiyas who criticize Jiva Goswami, and they have 3 accusations against Jiva Goswami. So as Gaudiya Vaishnavas, we should know what are the accusations and what are the right things. So they say, Jiva Goswami, we know the story. One time a scholar came in Vrindavan, and this scholar, he was carrying this Vijay Patra, and he came to know that in Vrindavan there are 2 very, very powerful scholars, Rupa Sanatan. So he went to Rupa Sanatan and he said, you argue with me. So Rupa Sanatan Goswami said, we don't have time to do all this. So he said, if you don't want to argue, you write this Vijay Patra, you sign. So Rupa Goswami, Sanatan Goswami is signed. And this Digvijay Pandit, he became so happy. He was going out. Then somebody said, oh, in Vrindavan there is one more scholar, Jiva Goswami is another emerging scholar. You defeat him. So this Digvijay Pandit, he went to Jiva Goswami and he said, your uncles, they have already signed this Vijay Patra, you also sign, or debate with me. So Jiva Goswami understood that out of humility, Rupa Sanatan Goswami, they have signed this. So just to maintain the dignity of his uncles, Rupa Sanatan, and to establish the supremacy of Rupa Sanatan Goswami, he debated with Digvijay Pandit for many days and he defeated him. So the mood was very, very clear. He wanted to establish the supremacy of Rupa Sanatan Goswami and not his own learning and not his own scholarship. But some people, they tell, oh, Jiva Goswami, he broke the principle of humility and therefore he was chastised by Rupa Goswami. So Prabhupada writes that Sahajiyas, they do not know that humility and meekness are appropriate when one's own honor is insulted. If somebody insults me, no problem. I will accept, I will tolerate. But when Lord Vishnu, Lord Krishna, or the great devotees or acharyas are blasphemed, we should not tolerate. We should not be humble. That is not the right way. If we hear somebody blaspheming devotees, blaspheming Krishna, we should not follow this principle, Trinadapi, Shunich. Oh, I am so very humble. No. That time you should be very, very strong and defeated. That's what Jiva Goswami did. Second accusation, some people they raise, they tell that when Kaviraj Goswami, he brought this Chaitanya Caritāmrta, he completed this Chaitanya Caritāmrta and brought in front of Jiva Goswami, he became afraid of his reputation. That's how, very sinful accusations people they put on Jiva Goswami. And they say that, out of his fear, Jiva Goswami threw that Chaitanya Caritāmrta in well, and that's why in anguish, Kaviraj Goswami, he died. That was another thing. And third, they say that Jiva Goswami did not approve of this Parakiya Bhava, Parakiya Ras of Brajadham and supported Swakiya Ras. So we should understand that these are not the right accusations. They are completely wrong. Why Jiva Goswami supported Swakiya Ras? Because when Jiva Goswami was there, some people they started imitating this Parakiya Bhava and they started indulging in all sorts of illicit affairs. So just to minimize all these illicit activities, Jiva Goswami gave more importance to the Swakiya Ras. And he said that Radha Krishna were already married. Brahmaji married them also. So Jiva Goswami, he accepted Parakiya Bhav. He understood, he knew that this is the highest, but because some people were misusing and exploiting this Parakiya Bhav, and they were having illicit affairs. That's why Jiva Goswami, he propagated this Swakiya Bhav more. Kaviraj Goswami tells that by the will of the Supreme Lord, the branches of Rup Sanatan Goswami, they spread throughout the Western countries, and they covered the entire Western region. And actually, these two branches expanded and extended throughout India. Dui Shakhar Prema Phal Sakala Bhasila Prema Phala Swade Lok Unmatta Hoila. So these two shakhas, Rupa Sanatan, they were so very powerful and so very luxuriantly growing that their fruits were getting distributed everywhere in abundance. Dui Shakhara Prema Phala Sakala Bhasila. Everybody was eating the fruits of these two branches. And tasting these fruits, what happened? Prema Phala Swade Loka Unmatta Hoila. By the power of their preaching, by the power of their writings and their personal practice, they were drowning everyone in this love of God. Paschimera Loka Sab Mudha Anachar Taha Pracharila Dohe Bhakti Sadachar. All these people of the Western India, they were unintelligent and not well behaved. Rup Sanatan Goswami, they personally gave this love of God. They trained them in devotional behavior. So Prabhupada writes that Rup Sanatan, they are very kindly preached this bhakti cult in the Western India, and following the footsteps, Prabhupada writes, we are propagating this Caitanya cult, the Sankirtan movement in the Western world, all over the world. And by the power of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, so many of the Western people, they have given up their malicha habits and they are becoming devotees of the Lord. That is the power of these two Shakha, Rupa Sanatan. Shastra Drishte Koila Lupta Tirthera Uddhar Vrindavane Koila Shri Murti Shrevar Prachar. So Rup Sanatan, they fulfilled the four desires of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Shastra Drishte. In accordance to the scriptural injunctions, Rup Sanatan Goswami, they excavated lots of holy places and they established the deity worship in Vrindavan. So Mahaprabhu, when he went to Vrindavan, he could not find Radha Kund. He could not find Shyam Kund. So when he was sitting in one place in Aritagram, he found in one paddy field two small puddles of water. And Mahaprabhu, because he is the same Krishna, he understood that this is the same place where Radha Kund and Shyam Kund were there. So then Mahaprabhu, he excavated this Radha Kund and Shyam Kund. And when Rupa Goswami and Sanatan Goswami went to Vrindavan, they made beautiful ghats. And they excavated so many of the other holy places. And by the power of Rupa Sanatan Goswami, so many important temples were established. Rupa Goswami established Radha Govinda temple. Sanatan Goswami established Madan Mohan temple. This is another story altogether. Radha Govinda and Radha Madan Mohan, that's a separate story about these temples. So after describing these two very, very powerful branches, now Kaviraj Goswami describes another branch. And this branch is Raghunath Das. So Kaviraj Goswami writes, Mahaprabhur Priya Bhritya Raghunath Das Sarvatyaji Kaila Prabhur Padatalevas. Mahaprabhur Priya Bhritya Raghunath Das. There was another great devotee, 46th branch. 43, 44, 45 are described. Now the 46th branch of this tree is Raghunath Das Goswami, who is very dear devotee of Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Mahaprabhu Priya Bhakta Raghunath Das Sarvatyaji. He gave up everything, all his property, wealth, prestige. He gave up everything. Sarvatyaji Kaila Prabhu Padatalevas. And he just stayed in service of Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So Prabhupada, he quotes Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, who writes in his Anubhashya commentary on Chaitanya Caritāmrta that Raghunath Das Goswami, he was born in 1494 in Kayastha family as a son of Govardhan Majumdar. This Govardhan Majumdar, he was the younger brother of Hiranya Majumdar. Hiranya Majumdar, he was a very, very wealthy businessman, a zamindar. And actually, in terms of today's calculation, they were billionaires. And in the entire family, Raghunath was the only heir. They had no other sons. So he was practically the son of a billionaire. He had everything at his disposal. Prabhupada writes that he describes the location of the home of Raghunath Das Goswami. And he describes the whole story of Raghunath. When Raghunath was a small child, one time Haridas Thakur, he came to stay at his father's place in the same village actually. And small Raghunath, he started associating with Haridas Thakur. And that is the power of associating with a pure devotee of the Lord. From his childhood, he became so very renounced, so very detached from material desires and material things. He always desired to hear and chant the holy names of the Lord. He had no other desires. So mother and father, they could see that this boy is becoming detached. So they married him very soon with a very, very beautiful, chaste wife. And they thought after he gets married, he'll forget all these, feelings of renunciation. But Raghunath remained the same. He would keep running to meet Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And father, he has to employ 12 bodyguards to keep him from running away. Every day, every night, he would run away. And mother, she became so upset. She's telling to his father, Putra batul hoila ihara kah bandhiya, tar pita kahe tare nirvinna hoiya. So mother is saying, Are beta pagal ho gaya, bandh ke rakho. Putra has become mad. Please keep him, bind him with rope. So father, he was also very sad. He says, Are Indra sama Ishwarya Striya Pusarasam, Ei sab bandhite nari lekar yarman. Are he has wealth of Indra. He has wife like Apsara. If all these things cannot bind him, how can ordinary rope bind him? Chaitanya Chandrera Kripa Hayya Hare. Chaitanya Chandrera Batul Ke Rakhi Te Pare. He has received mercy of Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Who can keep a madman of Lord Chaitanya? Krishna Pada Padma Gandha Jai Jana Pai. Brahmalok Adi Sukha Tare Nahi Bhai. If anybody has received, has experienced the fragrance of the lotus feet of the Lord, how can he be affected by the material entanglements of this world? That was Raghunath Das Goswami, who had wealth of Indra, who had wife like Apsara, but still he had no attraction for them. And ultimately one day he ran away. And he was running through jungles because he knew that if he goes through the main route, his father would send again his men. They would catch him again. ग्रामे ग्रामे पथ छाड़ी जाए बने बने काय मनो वाक्य चिंते चैतन्य चरणे. He was running through forests, through villages, not through villages, through forest. Grame grame path chhadi. Vane vane, he was running through forests. Always throughout, he was thinking of Chaitanya Charan. Just thinking, how will I meet Mahaprabhu? Sometimes he would get to eat, sometimes he would fast, sometimes he would get some milk. भक्षण अपेक्षा नहीं समस्त दिवस गमन क्षुधा नहीं बाधे चैतन्य चरणे प्राप्तिये मन. Sometimes he would get to eat, sometimes not. Hunger and thirst were not troubling him at all. Shudha nahi badhe. Why? Chaitanya charane praptiye man. That is the eagerness. Nothing can stop or disturb a devotee on the path of Krishna consciousness if he is really eager. All the material things, material problems, and material disturbances don't frustrate or trouble a devotee because he's fixed on his goal. Small things, they don't trouble much because what I am going to get in the ultimate end, I am going to attain Krishna. So why should I be disturbed by small things of this world? Therefore, Raghunath Das Goswami was just running. So Raghunath, he left his home in 1517. At the age of 23, he left his home. He was born in 1494. He left his home in 1517. And ultimately he reached Jagannath Puri, surrendered his life to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And for some days he was, being fed by the associates of Mahaprabhu. Then he said, oh, why I'm doing all this sense gratification. He would stand at the Simmadwar and he would beg. Then after that, he thought, oh, I am becoming like a prostitute. I'm just judging. This person will give me donation. This will not give me. This is not right. So he stopped begging also. He would just eat whatever rice was thrown, and even cows would not eat. Raghunath would go and wash those grains of rice and he would eat them. And he became so thin. It was just, sometimes he would not eat also. Viraj Goswami describes in great detail further about his life. So in this way, Raghunath Das Goswami, he was spending his time. He became the personal associate of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Mahaprabhu, he from the day he came to Jagannath Puri, Mahaprabhu put Raghunath Das under the care of Swarup Damodar Goswami, and therefore he was called as Swarupera Raghunath. Swarupera Raghunath. So Raghunath Das Goswami compiled 3 books: Stavamala, Dan Charit, and Mukta Charit. And throughout the life of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he was serving him. And when Mahaprabhu left this world, out of his anguish, he wanted to go to Vrindavan and he wanted to take darshan of Rup Sanatan and give up his life by jumping from Govardhan. So when he reached Vrindavan, these 2 brothers, they stopped him from committing this act and they accepted him as their younger brother. And they would constantly hear from him the pastimes of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, because he was the only one who witnessed all the wonderful pastimes of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And therefore, he would speak all these pastimes of Mahaprabhu 3 hours every day. So that was Raghunath Das Goswami. So this Raghunath Das Goswami, he practically stopped eating everything. Sometimes he would get few drops, he would take few drops of buttermilk. Every day he would offer 1000 obeisances to Vaishnavas. 1,000 obeisances to the deities, and he would chant 1 lakh holy names every day. That was his daily sadhana. Throughout the day, he would be immersed in the thoughts of Radha and Krishna. He would do discourse on the various pastimes of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, 3 hours. Prabhupada writes, we have to learn so many things about bhajan. How should we practice devotional service? We should follow in the footsteps of all the Goswamis of Vrindavan. Krishna Kirtana Gana Naratana Kala, Krishna Kirtana Gana Naratana Paro, Premamritambo Nidhi. All these Goswamis, what they were doing, they were absorbed in Krishna Kirtana Gana Naratan, singing, dancing, enjoying the pastimes of the Lord. Prabhupada writes, we have to execute our devotional principles very, very strictly. There is no excuse. If we want to experience the rasa and the joy of Krishna consciousness, we have to be really strict. If we are not strict, if you are not struggling, if you are not working hard, rasa of Krishna consciousness will be a very, very far out thing. So Rupa Goswami, Raghunath Das Goswami, he would 3 times take bath in Radha Kund, and practically he would sleep less than 2 hours. 22.5 hours he was engaged in devotional service, and sometimes he would not sleep at all. Kaviraj Goswami writes, actually, I am struck with wonder when I think about the devotional service of Raghunath Das Goswami. Therefore, I accept Raghunath Das Goswami as my spiritual master and Rupa Goswami as my spiritual master, spiritual guides. And then Kaviraj Goswami writes that later I'll explain about the character of Raghunath Das Goswami in great detail. So that is about the 46th branch. Then 47th branch will continue next time. We'll stop here. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. Shla Sanatan Goswami ki jai, Shla Rupa Goswami Pad ki jai, Shla Raghunath Das Goswami Pad ki jai, Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu ki jai, Shla Prabhupada ki jai. Hare Krishna.